I'm Kristian Teleki, Senior VP at Matthews Southwest and Public Policy Chair of the Real Estate Council. On today's webinar, we are looking at the steps that TREC has taken to advocate on your behalf during the COVID-19 outbreak. Now, we'll open up a conversation with our COVID-19 response working group members. So everybody, thanks very much for joining us today. Let's sort of start by introducing each other and what our roles are. So Mike Ablon, if you want to.
Yeah, I'd be glad to. I am Bill Colley's doppelganger and his huckleberry. I'm Vice Chair of the Real Estate Council and Chair of the Foundation this year.
That's great. Thanks, Mike. Michael?
Hi, my name is Michael Krywucki with the law firm Munsch Hardt. I'm a real estate and transactional lawyer, active participant and board member of the Real Estate Council and also on the Political Action Committee.
Great. Gerald?
Hi, Gerald Dunn with Benchmark Title, and I work on the PAC. I run the PAC this year, and I was public policy last year.
Great. And then Bryan.
Hi, everyone. My name is Bryan Tony. I am TREC's Director of Public Policy, overseeing our Public Policy Committee, which meets regularly under Kristian Teleki's leadership, as well as the PAC. So we'd love to have you involved if you're listening.
Excellent. So great group of experts and professionals in our industry. So let's start with really the first question. And Mike Ablon, this is really, we'll have you start out and then others can chime in as we need to. Why do you think it was necessary for construction to remain an essential business throughout Dallas's response to the pandemic?
Yeah, and you know, with every business, the discussion of what constitutes essential, and again, what I'm going to talk about, don't take it to be every single piece of infrastructure, but generally speaking, if you look at what's essential, I really go back to something very fundamental, which is Maslow's hierarchy of shelter, safety, food, and I'm going to call it education, the fundamentals. When we were articulating that construction and infrastructure was essential, what we were really understanding is that housing, road, water, sewer, these are fundamental pieces of our, not just our economy, but our society and our foundation of every day. And we had to get those, keep those working. You had to work safe, you have to work smart, but we had to keep it going. So in the shorter version, and again, I'm not referring to somebody calling repainting their dining room wall from pink to blue essential. I'm talking about the fundamentals of housing, food, road, water, infrastructure, and that development had to keep going because it's essential for society. So that was our position, was to make sure that within the realm of appropriateness, we articulated why it was essential and keep it moving. Again, safe and smart.
Okay, no, that's a great answer. You know, given what we do on the development side is at Matthews, you know, one thing that I would add to that and why it was not easy, but why it was logical to allow construction to keep on going is that the construction industry of all the other sectors, you look at retail, you look at commercial, we already have a system in place where safety is monitored. PPE is not a acronym that is foreign to the construction industry. We have safety directors on construction sites. So to have one more level of measurement and control was sort of a natural for the construction industry to be able to manage, as opposed to how do you deal with it in a retail store and who's wearing what PPE, and some clerks saying, what's PPE even mean? Well, so for the construction industry, it was logical, you know, in terms of what Mike has just shared, but the extension of having it be monitored and controlled to allow for safety of what is already a controlled and safe enclosed environment with safety barriers, et cetera, and access to construction sites. It was sort of a logical place to keep that going forward. So I think it sort of ties into what you said, Mike, in why it would make sense and has made sense to allow it be a safe environment.
I couldn't agree more.
Okay. If nobody has anything else to add, we'll go to the next question. And Gerald, this will be for you to start with anyways. what approach did TREC take when rumors began to circulate that construction might get shut down as part of these stay-at-home orders?
Well, the good news, we had Bryan there to quarterback it, and he just got all of the best people, and everybody jumped in. And I have to say, Mike Ablon, who's on the phone here, did an amazing job of articulating kind of the issues at hand. And then we had Mike Krywucki start wordsmithing, and it was tremendous.
Yeah, I think that's good. Bryan, any other thoughts that you'd add on that?
Absolutely. As a membership-driven organization, we're only as strong as our membership voices are, and everybody participated in giving feedback to our county judge and our elected officials. We'll get into how we went about that. But without our members' feedback and support, representing over 2,200 individual members, 650 member companies, the Real Estate Council was able to really wield its influence well here in this case to keep people employed, working, and meeting those needs that Mike talked about.
Great. Okay, so maybe specifically then, and Michael Krywucki will sort of lean on you for this answer. So part of this shelter in place, there was some discussion around Dallas dealing with the proposal to send 60-day pre-eviction notices to commercial and residential tenants. So from a TREC perspective, tell us a little about sort of that process and what we did and how we arrived at a decision to provide some response to the city on what they were contemplating.
Thank you, Kristian. Well, first of all, without saying, it's a difficult situation for all involved. And as a part of this, we appreciate the compassion shown by city leaders, governmental agencies, as well as the community in ensuring that residents, tenants, commercial and residential, as well as landlords, are all dealing with impacts from this crisis, and that to the extent there is a way to provide relief and minimize displacement, that could potentially help the greater community overall. And so the initial concept that was proposed was the city leaders wanted to provide a safety net to help all residents and family businesses and families from losing their rental homes, apartments, and places of business. And as a result, an ordinance was initially drafted because you have to start somewhere. And that was provided for initial guidance and input. And its main focus was to provide a big safety net for those who, in fact, had incurred some economic hardship and may not be able to pay their rent at all, or only partial payments, and to go ahead and contribute to the homelessness or displacement of businesses even further, was viewed as a challenge. So, TREC saw this and recognized that one of our goals, obviously, is to help and support the community. We have a variety of stakeholders within TREC, and that was really our focus all along, to make sure that the rights and interests of all stakeholders participating in the process or affected by this crisis would receive appropriate protection and consideration. And one of the things that jumped out to us is, while we appreciate the heart being in the right place to protect families and family businesses, many of these families also had family businesses which consisted of rental homes or smaller shopping centers or restaurant sites. And all of those would have been impacted as well if the original ordinance as proposed would have gone through. So we also appreciated that, fortunately, the federal and state governments were not sitting on the sidelines, and they had taken some initiatives to provide some relief against evictions and writs of possession being issued to displaced parties. So, and we also believe that in a time of crisis, you'd like to bet on the human spirit as being compassionate as well. And we also believe that many landlords, whether commercial or residential, would extend some compassion and be cooperative and reasonable to their tenants who are having financial troubles during this time, because everyone knows it's very expensive to displace a tenant and then replace them with a tenant, regardless of whether it's residential or commercial. And so there is a motivation to cooperate anyway. As a result, the proposed ordinance went through several iterations, and we commend the city council for creating the ad hoc committee. We also appreciate their great efforts to provide us with an opportunity and a seat at the table to contribute. And, through the efforts of my colleagues here on this panel, as well as the others who participated in this process, led by Bryan, we were able to go ahead and review and provide input to some of the proposed ordinances and make recommendations. Seeing where the state of Texas has already had an eviction moratorium until May 18th, which is still in effect. Dallas County actually has a moratorium on evictions through June 6th currently. So again, appreciating those are in place. We wanted to make sure that the ultimate ordinance, in fact, was tailored. And we're pleased that, in fact, the final product did achieve that. First and foremost, it was limited to residential tenancies only. Secondly, there was some clarification made to truly identify those being economically affected by COVID and not being overly broad and inclusive, because most of the landlords are still going to have mortgage obligations as well as carrying costs for the operations of the property. And so we were pleased to see that those narrowed. We also greatly appreciated the fact that this gave an opportunity for the creation of the tenant assistance program for payments. Not only does that offer some relief, this is in the final ordinance that was passed, not only does that offer some relief to the tenants who can, in fact, potentially qualify and begin making payments in full or significant part, but also that would then allow the residential landlords who are under the moratorium on evictions to receive some revenue. So that was an incredibly great feature. The benefit of providing a mechanism for the parties to negotiate has a lot of function to it, and we appreciate and supported that. And the final outcome of this ordinance makes the whole process a lot more predictable. And we see this as a positive evolution of a concept that was well intentioned to something that, at the end of the day, should provide some relief, but also not go further and cause unintended consequences.
That's a great summary.
Yeah, I was just going to add, and Mike covered it in his kind of last comment, the heart and the spirit of the notion is unquestionable. The original draft, which was never intended to be the final draft, but the commencement of the conversation, had a litany of unintended consequences, not just for landlords or tenants, but also on the city, because in our mind, it also tiptoed on whether it violated some other larger overriding entities like a state law. And so it was really helping tailor it down so that you got the vast majority of the good and you took out the unintended consequences. And under Bryan's leadership, I think that was tailored significantly. And I think that Bryan and Krywucki and the other group that were working on it really helped the city, the whole city, by having this done. So it was kind of enjoyable to watch a very positive result for the entire community out of the effort.
And to add to what Mike said, first of all, thank you. And it was clearly a team effort. We were pleased by the input of many stakeholders in the community and members company-wide at the company level as well as individual level within TREC who supported. And that really helped make this become a reality and actually achieve the goals without overstepping. And as Mike noted, there were significant questions as to the constitutionality of some of the earlier iterations of the ordinance and whether or not there would be conflict between state and federal law as well. And it's also important that there was a recognized exception for criminal activity and also domestic violence, which, of course, an unintended consequence would have been, in fact, to allow residents to remain who were promoting conduct along those lines, and they'd have the safe harbor. So it was truly a team effort. So we were pleased by the evolution result.
That's great. Thanks to both Michael and Mike on that. So sort of subsequent to that, then, Bryan, for you, Michael, the team sort of works on a response. How does that get communicated to the city and other stakeholders? And then what was the ultimate outcome?
Absolutely. So, this working group was crucial. One of the first things that we did in beginning with the construction to evaluating the ordinance as it was proposed was establish this working group, and also connecting with business leaders and other industry leaders. So we got with Sean Todd of Todd Interest, Fred Paul with the Beck Group. We're in constant communications with the Apartment Association of Greater Dallas, the Dallas Builders Association, Metrotex Realtors, and anyone in between who's connected to the real estate industry, so that we're all speaking with a united voice. So in that sense, there's kind of two ways that we communicate, one formally and one more so informal, if you will. So formally, we did submit a letter of opposition when the ordinance was drafted, that this would not be something beneficial for the community in Dallas. So that was kind of a way of speaking out and putting our first foot forward, and then offering solutions with our members' help and input on ways that the ordinance could be crafted to achieve its well-intended and, of course, well-hearted outcome, which is what we all arrived at in the end, that we believe. So that was kind of the formally aspect of it. In addition, Bill Cawley spoke on behalf of TREC as our board chair to Chairman McGue's ad hoc council committee. And that helps put a face and a leadership behind everything that we might be saying in an email or in a letter with our elected officials and city council members. So we thank him for his support in representing the organization at that time. And then informally, everything else behind the scenes, emails with the city council staff members and the elected officials, seeing those revisions as they're coming out, staying in touch with what other organizations are proposing, and making sure that we're all in alignment so that we are able to address it in real time. And so, as kind of recapped already, that result of the COVID notice of a possible eviction is strictly towards the current crisis that we're in right now. It's not something that is going to be in effect on any type of local disaster like we've had so many of recently. But for this unprecedented time that we're in, we're able to both give people some support and a chance to address any kind of hardship that they're facing and reconcile with their landlords. And at the same time now, with mortgage and rental assistance programs and small business continuity programs in line, commercial tenants as well can work and negotiate with their landlords, who are all trying their best to make it work as well in their own best interests to keep our economy as strong as it can possibly be. So those would be the two ways and the ultimate outcomes that we arrived at.
Great. And it's terrific, and a lot of good work by a lot of smart people. So today's kind of a special day. Today is May 1st. Today is the beginning of the governor's relaxation of opening up the state. So kind of, I think we got Mike Ablon, who's doing some field reconnaissance for us on kind of what's happening. So turning our attention to this recovery, it's open for everybody. How do each of you see, from your respective perspectives in the commercial real estate industry, how do you see the recovery kind of playing out? Krywucki, you're on the legal side, you got clients, Gerald, you got clients that are on the title side, and obviously Mike and I are on the development side. And then Bryan, you got a bunch of 2,000 some odd members. So how do each of you see this recovery playing out? And I don't know, Mike, you're out doing the field work, so why don't we start with you?
Yeah, if for those of y'all who I'm giving a bad glare to, I apologize. As you can see, I've got the face mask, and it is Friday. I don't know when you're watching this, but it's Friday right after lunch, and I'm going to a number of places today, and that's in my opinion. That's part of my job, isn't sometimes just to watch and observe and think and try to understand. So actually, I've been going to restaurants. I'll go to a couple more. I'll look at them. And here's what I was interested in. How does it work, and what's the balance between what is a regulatory accepted opening up, whether it's 25% of restaurants today, and then in 2 weeks from today, they move to 50%, versus what's the social acceptance? When are we ready as a society? Are we comfortable? What makes us comfortable, and in what venues? So, what's the balance there? And I think what you're going to find, and we can all hypothecate on, and you'll have the whole pendulum swing of, did we do too much? Did we do not enough? Where are we now? Is it time? Is it not time? I'm on the notion of, I'm just taking the moment for what it is, taking the rule book and where we're at for where it is. We'll all look back in 2 years, and we will definitely have learned a lot. We will have the best practices. But as of the moment, where are we? And I would tell you, it might be as you would expect, where it feels comfortable, and those who feel comfortable are going outside, going to restaurants, and opening up. Those who think they're not comfortable, they're staying in. So currently, and if I look at occupancy level in restaurants as a barometer, personal comfort, personal emotional safety is trumping the law in the sense of it's the governing parameter. And we'll see how it all opens up. I will say this. For the restaurants I've gone to already today, if you said, are they respecting social distancing? Are they showing a collective conscience of safety, yet opening up? The answer is yes. And what Mike would tell you, Krywucki, if he had more time, he might take, as we've talked about it, the collegiality between the lender, the landlord, and the tenant working together is at the highest point I can tell you I've ever seen in my career. And that's a great statement. In the worst of times, you're seeing more of the best of people. And as a collective group, I look out there right now, and I haven't seen a bunch of crazy hillbillies running around. I've seen people ready to open up and go out and doing it with some self-discipline, which is what we want, what we have to have.
No, great perspective. Gerald or Michael?
Gerald, why don't you jump in?
I can kind of jump in real quick. We have been open as a business now for, this whole time period, and we had to adjust in the first weeks or so to be able to operate with people remote and with some people in our office, and then to be able to close deals and transact money to people. Obviously, that were, it's very important. And so, and we actually, even from our residential side, we were doing closings in people's cars. We would bring out the documents and let people sign in their cars so they weren't exposed to anybody. But in the sensitivity of this, we have employees that are older, and they could be compromised, and we got to be very careful with them as well as our clients. And so we have basically said we're going to continue to operate in this environment as we are, and we've done it pretty smoothly. And to be very sensitive to this, what's going on out there, on both sides. And I just think this will continue on for a while for some people till hopefully people feel more comfortable with the testing, et cetera. And then people that are most vulnerable do get to stay home and are able to take care of themselves.
Yeah. Michael?
Yes, it is truly a unique situation. I heard someone describe the current environment. I think it was Mark Dotzer, the Aggie real estate economist. He basically said this is a combination of 9/11, the 2008 Great Recession, and World War II. all colliding because, you have the Defense Production Act and the like kicking in. It's truly unique circumstance, and it's had a stranglehold on just about everything and everyone. As everyone tries to reemerge and come out of this, no one size will fit every situation. And every participant, whether, it's an employer, an employee, a property owner and their management company, or even the janitorial crew, or the tenants and their operators and their customers and their suppliers, everyone needs to work in concert together. And if they don't, especially all working in concert as a result of, in compliance with the CDC guidelines and other applicable laws, it's just going to be an absolute train wreck and collision. And we very easily could see a resumption of the climb and unflatten the curve if there's a lack of cooperation. And so, as Ablon said, we have been fortunate to see as probably a great communication line occurring between the parties involved, and we just hope that continues. Employers are doing everything from reorienting their space plans to doing different shifts or staggered shifts for different workers, allowing some to work from home, allowing some to come in the office periodically. I mean, it's going to require a lot of flexibility on everyone's behalf. But, for example, we went ahead and had two of our notaries become remote notaries, going through a special process to achieve closings similar to what Gerald was describing well. And, it's definitely going to be a new world. The light switch isn't going to go on. It's not going to be full power for a while. But, reopening the business is a good first step. And Ablon, I think we can give a shout out to Bryan Schultz with Studio Movie Grill. Some movie theaters are opening up because Governor Abbott said it's fine. But Bryan took the pulse of his employees and customers, and they said, we're ready to go, just not yet.
Right.
And it'll be important not to force people into a circumstance before they're actually ready to embark on it.
And Kristian, just for the record, I'd like to clarify, Michael Krywucki is not in his office. That is just a green screen behind him. He's actually got a cigar and a scotch next to his pool. And that's just, so on these webcasts, you got to be careful to get the facts straight. Now, I just want to clarify it for anybody watching us. Krywucki is actually at his pool with a cigar and a scotch, and that whole background is it's just a myth. It's just mythology.
I'm trying to turn the automatic light back on. It hurts speaking. So, and for what it's worth, since we're not on Zoom, my Zoom background is King Kong climbing on the Empire State Building, because not only am I originally from the Northeast, but I figured even King Kong needs to escape somewhere amidst this crisis. So.
There's a great little bar that opened, and this is actually a great telltale story for what we're talking about. And a gentleman opened up named Joe Tollison a bar in the medical district, and he opened it in a little restaurant bar 5 days before the shutdown. So he had a muralist come and do a mural on the wall of, what was her name? The Rivet.
Rosie.
Rosie, what was it, Mike? What was her proper
Rosie
name?
the Riveter.
Rosie the Riveter. And she had the face mask on. And they had it on exactly. And they had her on the national news. And I think Rosie the Riveter with the mask ought to be your background, Krywucki. I think you need to work on that.
Well, there you go. So other than the fact that Mike's really on a floaty in his pool. So thanks for calling that out, Mike. Appreciate it.
That's some more of that collegiality I was talking about.
Right. Absolutely. So you guys have, the three of you have talked what I would say sort of the micro side of this, and really just for 2 more minutes, my perspective on the macro side is, I think as it relates to the commercial real estate industry, you're going to see some sectors that are going to come back with a vengeance. The good news is, unlike 2008, where it was a real structural issue, and we went into this thing in a train wreck. This economy, and certainly the North Texas region, was on fire as far as being healthy and intelligent, and developers doing smart things and not overbuilding and not speculative. So I think to come back and come out of this thing, again, at a macro level, I think you'll see sectors probably like logistics that you don't have enough facilities. We're seeing that as a developer in Canada as well as here in the US, probably multifamily still, because, and oddly enough, we're now seeing as a developer, we're seeing some single family multifamily guys really come to the forefront because of the flexibility and the trade-off that people want to have single family living, but multifamily flexibility. So actually, we've got a couple of deals we're working on that are in that space right now. Things like hospitality, probably going to take a little while to come back. So that's my perspective on the near and medium term for the commercial industry, sort of in general. Anyways, I just want to chime in on that one. So lastly, again, sort of at the micro level, as we're sort of wrapping up the call, what would each of you think and want to share is the most important thing that our members can do to prepare to go back to the office? And maybe just one item from each of you. So Wookie, what do you think? Your colleagues at Munsch Hardt.
I think if everyone can bring a good attitude and a flexible mindset, we're going to make it through this.
Okay. Gerald.
I think everybody has to be honest with themselves and realize that, that if in fact they're traveling or et cetera, and they can come in contact with these things, they've got to be mindful of the people that they're around, so to make sure that they're not spreading anything, or, especially somebody like myself, I'm out all the time, and coming back to my office, I could bring something with me. So, yeah. And there's people that would be vulnerable to that. So I think you have to be very sensitive to your situation. And I think as we all do that, I think we'll be okay.
Okay. Mike.
I'm going to go back to a lesson that I learned by observation over the last 3 or 4 or 5 recessions. And that's not saying this was a recession, but let's say it's a difficult time with a dislocation. We all want to protect our business, and then we all want to grow and prosper. And so to a lot of people, that correlates to opportunistic and not predatory, but what are the opportunities? And I would say a lesson learned from the past for me from watching is the people who stuck with their trade craft, the people who stuck with what they're really good at and focused on it did really well going forward. And the ones who, I'm going to make something up, they're in hospitality. Hospitality is obviously hurting, and they say, hey, that storage unit stuff is going great. I'm going to hop into that. The people who did that inevitably, I think, didn't respect enough the trade craft of the other trade. And the people who are going to do well opportunistically are already in that trade. So for me, the lesson, it's not the lesson learned, but the lesson reminded is stick to what I do, try to be very good at it and stay focused, and don't look for a quick win or an easy. There's nothing easy and there's nothing quick. You have a trade craft, stick with it, focus on it, because going forward, that is your best chance of not just survival, but prosperity.
That's great. Stick to your knitting.
Yep.
It's great thought, Mike. I don't know, Bryan, anything in particular you want to share with your TREC colleagues as you're about to walk back in the office? What should each of you do? What's one word of advice or wisdom?
Yeah, absolutely. To all of our members, our virtual doors are open. We want to hear from you. We want to still be able to provide virtual networking opportunities and programming that is insightful. So please feel free to email myself or anyone else on the TREC staff. We'd love to service you. We need your support through this just as much as any other nonprofit does. So we'd encourage you to think about those causes that you're passionate about and continue to find ways that you can support the organizations you care about, including TREC.
Kristian, can I add one more thing? Because I know Bill Colley would want to say this if Bill was on the call. He had a conflict. If he was on
sure.
Go
right ahead.
But what Bill would say would be, this is a team game. And TREC is here for you. They're here to support you. Please reach out. They have incredible resources, incredible networks. Bryan, Tony, and the rest of the team there can really, if they don't know how to put it together, they can get you to the right person. TREC is here for you. Come to TREC, and TREC needs you to also get involved to help in our community outreach. Because there's, no matter where any of us are, there's others who are in greater need. And it's also our job, it's a measuring stick of each of us. And collectively, are we doing our part in the broader community? So if you need help, reach out. If you can provide extra time and resources and expertise, please get involved. We need you so that we can collectively achieve our mission. And he would always end up by cracking a joke, which I'm not going to do because I'm not good at jokes. But he's going to say, we're going to get there. We're going to get there together. And we're going to come out. We always have. This is Dallas. We're going to do fantastic.
Spoken like a true bag man. That is great stuff.
Yep. He's the man.
Joe will appreciate that. So let's wrap this up then. So thanks for joining us today and sharing your insights. We hope to see you back in the TREC offices soon, everybody. Thank you for your audience and tuning in today. Mic drop.